There's a feature sitting inside Windows 11 right now that, if enabled, takes periodic screenshots of your screen and stores them in a searchable timeline on your device. Not a rumor, not a leak. This is documented behavior straight from Microsoft's own support pages. And the reason so many people are caught off guard isn't because it's hidden. It's because they moved through setup too fast, clicked through a prompt without reading it, or explored a new AI feature without thinking through what they were agreeing to. So before you close this tab thinking it doesn't apply to you, take 60 seconds to find out whether this is running on your machine right now. Because if it is, and you didn't mean to turn it on, this video will walk you through exactly how to shut it down, wipe the history, and remove it entirely if you want. If you're new to Nolan Tech, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because we upload new tech videos regularly that help you stay ahead. The feature is called Recall, and it's part of Microsoft's Copilot Plus PC experience. That's the first thing worth understanding. Recall doesn't run on every Windows 11 machine. Microsoft has set some fairly specific hardware requirements. You need a Copilot Plus PC, a neural processing unit with at least 40 TOPS of performance, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage, device encryption or BitLocker enabled, and you need to be enrolled in Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-In Security with at least one biometric sign-in option set up. So if you dig through your settings and can't find Recall anywhere, that's likely why. Your device doesn't meet the requirements. But if you do have it, the decision you're about to make isn't a small one. You're deciding whether you want your PC to periodically capture screenshots of your screen and build a searchable archive of what you've been doing. Microsoft's own documentation describes it as snapshots, screenshots of your activity that are captured every few seconds when the content of your active window changes, if you opt in. That's the feature in a single sentence, a searchable visual record of your screen over time. Now, let's be clear about something right away, because there's been a lot of noise around Recall and not all of it is accurate. Microsoft's documentation explicitly states that Recall does not record audio and does not save continuous video. It also won't save game video when game mode is active on platforms that support it. So if you've heard that Recall is secretly recording your microphone or making a full video capture of your desktop in the background, that's not what Microsoft describes. What we're dealing with is periodic snapshots and content analysis, which is still significant, but it's a different thing entirely. The genuinely sensitive part isn't audio. It's everything that appears on your screen during a normal day. Think about what passes across your monitor in a single afternoon. Password reset emails, a banking dashboard, a healthcare portal, private messages to people you care about, work documents with client information, internal dashboards with numbers that are nobody else's business. If Recall is saving snapshots during all of that, you end up with a very dense archive of your digital life sitting on your hard drive. And that's where the real conversation begins. Microsoft is also upfront about where that data lives. According to their support documentation, snapshots and the contextual information derived from them are saved and encrypted to your local hard drive. Microsoft states clearly that Recall does not share snapshots or associated data with Microsoft or third parties, and that data is not shared between different Windows users on the same device. That's an important distinction. Local only is fundamentally different from cloud synced. The data stays on your machine. But here's the mindset shift you need to make. Because local doesn't automatically mean consequence-free. If you value privacy, the question you should be asking isn't just where does the data go? The better question is, do I want this record to exist at all? Because even encrypted, even local, a rich archive of your screen activity is something that changes your threat surface. Device theft becomes more serious. Malware that can access local storage becomes more serious. Shared devices or family computers become more complicated. These aren't hypotheticals. They're basic threat modeling considerations that apply to anyone who handles sensitive information. And speaking of sensitive information, let's talk about what controls actually exist, because this is where a lot of people fall into one of two traps. Either they panic and assume there's nothing they can do, or they assume the built-in filters handle everything and stop paying attention. Both of those are wrong. Microsoft documents a filtering system that lets you choose which apps and websites are excluded from being captured in snapshots. There's also a sensitive information filtering setting that's enabled by default and is designed to help filter out snapshots when certain types of sensitive content are detected, things like passwords and credit card numbers. But Microsoft's own language is careful here, and you should pay attention to it. The documentation says it helps filter out and references potentially sensitive information. Helps potentially. That's mitigation language, not guarantee language. The filter is a safety net with known holes, not an airtight privacy wall. The filtering system also has browser-specific dependencies that matter. Website filtering only works in supported browsers. Edge, Firefox, Opera, and Chrome are listed. And even within those browsers, Microsoft notes that parts of a filtered website can still appear in snapshots under certain conditions, like embedded content or a tab sitting in the background. So the filter does real work, but it's not invisible armor around every sensitive site you visit. Private browsing is handled differently. Microsoft says private browsing activity will not be saved as snapshots when you're using Edge, Firefox, Opera, Chrome, or other Chromium-based browsers. That's a stronger commitment, but it's still tied to using a supported browser and actually being in a private session. If you switch browsers or forget to open an incognito window before checking something sensitive, those protections don't apply. If you're enjoying this video and finding it useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It really helps the channel and lets us keep making detailed tech content like this. Remote workers should pay attention to one more detail Microsoft documents. Snapshots are not saved when supported remote desktop clients are in use. Microsoft lists remote desktop connection, VM Connect, Azure Virtual Desktop, and a few others. But then comes the nuance. Clients will be saved unless the client has screen capture protection enabled. So if your entire privacy strategy for keeping sensitive work off your personal machine relies on remote desktop, you shouldn't assume you're automatically protected across every scenario without verifying your specific setup. There's also something Microsoft mentions that most people completely miss. A note in their documentation about recall, occasionally fetching small web assets like favicons or metadata from the internet to improve the timeline and search experience. This isn't the same as uploading your snapshots, and Microsoft is clear about that. But it does mean that even with local processing, there can be minor network activity tied to the content you've browsed. If you're operating at a level of privacy sensitivity where that matters, it's worth knowing. Now let's talk about what access to your recall data actually looks like, because Microsoft has put meaningful protections in place here. Snapshots are protected with Windows Hello, meaning only the signed-in user can access their own recall content. Every time you launch Recall or try to change settings within it, you're asked to confirm your identity through Windows Hello. Microsoft describes a just-in-time decryption process protected by Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-In Security. The encryption keys are protected by the TPM and tied to your Windows Hello identity, and those keys can only be used within what Microsoft calls a virtualization-based security enclave, a secure, isolated environment designed to protect recall data from other processes and raise the bar against unauthorized access. Microsoft also mentions rate limiting and anti-hammering protections built into the system to reduce the risk of automated abuse. So when you look at the full security architecture as Microsoft describes it, there's genuine engineering behind keeping this data locked down on your device. The honest summary is that Microsoft has designed Recall to be secure through encryption, isolation, and biometric gating. But the security architecture doesn't change the core privacy decision you have to make. If the snapshot archive shouldn't exist in the first place for your use case, no amount of encryption changes that reality. Decide whether you want this feature running, and then use the controls that are available to you. Let's get into exactly how to take control of it, because Microsoft actually gives you several levels of options and they're all documented. The most immediate thing you can do is verify whether snapshot saving is even on. Go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Recall and Snapshots, and look at the Save Snapshots toggle. Microsoft's position is that saving snapshots is not enabled by default. You have to opt in. That means the toggle should be off unless you or someone using your device turned it on. But people enable things without fully reading them, so don't assume. Go look, verify, then decide with full information. If you find it's on and you want to stop it immediately, turning off that same toggle is your first move. Snapshots will stop being taken. But what about the ones that were already saved? Microsoft documents deletion controls that are actually more granular than most people expect. You can delete all snapshots in one action, or you can delete snapshots within specific time windows. The past hour, the past 24 hours, the past 7 days, or the past 30 days. That last option is genuinely useful. If Recall was running during a specific period when you handled something sensitive, you can target exactly that window and wipe it without erasing everything. If you need an emergency stop rather than a permanent one, Microsoft also documents a quick pause option. Find the Recall icon in your system tray, click it, and choose Pause until tomorrow. Snapshots will stop being saved and won't resume until midnight. When paused, the system tray icon shows a visible slash through it, so you can see at a glance that saving is off. Microsoft notes the icon disappears entirely if Save Snapshots is set to off permanently, so the presence or absence of that icon becomes a useful daily checkpoint. For the people who want it gone completely, Microsoft describes Recall as an optional Windows feature that can be fully removed. You go to Turn Windows Features, on or off, uncheck Recall, and restart your PC. Microsoft says any previously saved snapshots will be deleted when the feature is removed. This is documented removal straight from Microsoft. Not a workaround, not a registry hack. Just the standard optional features process. And if you've been using Recall for a while and want a complete clean start without fully removing the feature, Microsoft also documents a reset option. Under the Recall and Snapshot section in Settings, there's an Advanced Settings area with a Reset option. Confirming that Reset deletes all stored snapshots and resets your recall settings back to default, but it requires Windows Hello authorization to complete, consistent with the security model throughout the feature. One thing worth understanding about storage, because the numbers Microsoft publishes are actually quite large. On a 256 gigabyte device, Recall can store up to 25 gigabytes of snapshot history by default. On a 512 gigabyte device, that default jumps to 75 gigabytes. On a device with 1 terabyte or more of storage, Recall can hold up to 150 gigabytes of snapshot history. Those aren't small archives. And when those limits are reached, the oldest snapshots are deleted first to make room for new ones, which is why if you're concerned about something specific that was captured weeks ago, you should delete it intentionally rather than waiting for it to age out. Now let's address something important for people in professional environments. Microsoft's documentation states that in managed commercial and education environments, Recall will be removed by default until IT administrators explicitly choose to allow it. So if you're using a work device managed by your company, the feature is almost certainly not present unless your IT department has made a specific decision to enable it. This is worth knowing if you're an employee wondering about organizational risk, but it doesn't remove the need for personal vigilance on personal devices or shared home computers. Microsoft also directly answers the question of whether Recall can enable itself without your knowledge. Their documentation states that each person needs to decide whether to allow saving snapshots, and that Recall can only offer you the option. It cannot silently enable itself. That's a significant claim, and Microsoft is explicit about it. That said, the people who end up with it enabled aren't the ones who were hacked. They're the ones who clicked through a setup prompt too quickly, tapped yes during the first time Recall experience without thinking through what they were agreeing to, or explored AI features without reading the fine print. One casual confirmation is all it takes to start the snapshot pipeline, which is exactly why you shouldn't rely on memory or assumptions. Verify in settings directly. So what does all of this mean in practical terms? If you're someone who just wants a straightforward, low-maintenance approach to privacy, the answer is simple. Keep save snapshots off and you don't have to think about this again. If you're someone who handles sensitive professional information, regulated data, client records, medical documents, legal files, anything that should never exist in bulk screenshot form, the right move is to keep snapshots off and consider removing Recall entirely as an optional feature. The filtering system is useful if you do use Recall, but it's a mitigation tool, not a substitute for deciding whether the feature should be running at all. If you do want the productivity benefit that Recall offers, the ability to search back through your activity across apps and documents using natural language, then enable it intentionally with full awareness of what it does. Configure app filters to exclude anything you don't want captured. Use a supported browser for website filtering. Keep sensitive information filtering turned on. Set up a regular habit of reviewing and deleting snapshot history you no longer need. Treat the filtering as your seatbelt, not your airbag. The controversy around Recall makes sense when you understand the feature. Frequent screenshots of your activity create a detailed log of your digital life, and that raises legitimate questions about risk and trust regardless of how well the security architecture is designed. Data exposure, device theft, shared environments, malware, these are real considerations that change when a large local archive of screen activity exists on your machine. Microsoft has put real engineering work into making Recall secure and giving users meaningful control. That's worth acknowledging. But the decision about whether that archive should exist at all is yours to make. And making it deliberately is better than discovering it was made for you by a careless click. Check your settings. Look at the Save Snapshots toggle. If it's off and you want it to stay off, you're done. If it's on and you didn't intend that, turn it off and delete the history. If you want Recall completely gone, remove it through the optional Windows Features process. And if you want a full clean slate, reset it to wipe all snapshots at once. That's how you handle this. Not with panic, not by ignoring it, but by making an informed choice and using the controls that are already there. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn on notifications so you never miss future tech videos. Now I want to hear from you. After checking your settings, did you find that Recall was already enabled on your machine, or was it off by default? Drop it in the comments below.